What does Davos, Switzerland, gas prices, and this guy have to do with your life? Well, it actually has a whole lot to do with it. What does it have to do with how you are going to prepare for your future? Or, as he says, how he will build the future.
Now it's here. Or should I say, I am.
What's up, everybody? I'm Timothy Johnson. Welcome back to Church and State. This episode, it's crazy. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, the World Economic Forum met in Davos. If you don't know where Davos is, it's in Switzerland. Now, the World Economic Forum is a group of elites that meet there every single year, and they meet there to, in the words of their founder, build the future, because the future does not just happen, it's built by them.
The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
In any other multiverse, this guy would be a Bond villain. You know what I mean? He's got that deep low voice, and he says the bid is built by us. Well, the elites of the world meet in Davos every single year. CEOs of Google, YouTube, your favorite companies to buy from, Coca-Cola, all of these companies that meet in Davos every single year, ambassadors, entrepreneurs, heads of state, to solve the inequalities of the world, income inequality, poverty, climate change. Also, that talks about green energy, which means your gas prices, right? Preparing for the next pandemic and where mankind will be in the next 10, 15 years, and who will rule them. Will you have more say over your life in the next 10 years? Or will the government have more say? In case you haven't guessed already, these guys are the bad guys, but they think they're doing the right thing, kind of like Thanos.
Simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
But in this episode, we're gonna watch some clips exactly from the World Economic Forum and then watch some journalistic clips as well. Also, did you know the World Economic Forum had their own police force? Let me just paint the picture for you one more time. You have an unelected elite class of people who go to Davos every single year to protest climate change in their private jets and gasoline cars. And they want to lecture you on how you will live your life. This really begs the question though, do you know what's best for your life? Or do you think that a group of elites in a distant country know how best to live your life for you? That's really what it comes down to. Let's take a look at some of the ideas that are going through the World Economic Forum and what they mean for your life. This is the CEO of biotech.
This is a global infrastructure. We now know that ultimately we're only as strong as the weakest among us, and so we need a global surveillance infrastructure. I guess the good news is, as we're deploying this infrastructure around the world, we can't prevent future outbreaks, but we should commit to say this could be the last pandemic we see.
A global infrastructure to protect against pandemics. Surveillance, only for your safety. There's always this push and pull, folks, between freedom and liberty and security. And in America, the promise of security, we don't buy. Because they say, if you give up your liberties and your freedom, right? Kind of like gun control. If you give up your liberties to own guns, it'll protect everybody else. Well, unfortunately, criminals don't follow gun laws. That's why they're criminals. And so the allure of giving up your freedoms for security, Ben Franklin actually says this, that those who would give up their freedoms for security end up getting none, and they deserve neither. It's actually foolish to do that. But this is exactly what the World Economic Forum wants you to do. This is CNN medical analyst Larry Brilliant, although I think he should change his last name.
Let's take Sweden and China. Sweden, that progressive country that we all think about as being the leader of liberality and freedom, and usually always makes the right foreign policy decisions. And I think, at least in my world, we're really fond of Sweden, and it's sort of a light, but they really messed up this pandemic. They have the highest death rate from the pandemic in the world. And that was because of decisions that were made very early, that liberty and individual freedom mattered more than the collective benefit of vaccinating, wearing masks. There was a great anti-mask movement, anti-vaccine movement.
So he's basically saying the collective good, right, whatever we tell you is good, should outweigh your freedoms. Make no mistake that with COVID, it was their ideal circumstance because the vaccines, the promise of the lockdowns, the allure of all that was you're fearing death and you get the promise of life. And you can get anyone to do anything pretty much if they fear death and with the promise of life. And that's exactly what these elites are saying. They're pushing this climate hysteria, right, as they travel in their private jets, so that you will believe that they only alone offer life. But we worship God, not government. In fact, listening to how COVID was their ideal situation for taking away your rights, listen to the former Prime Minister of New Zealand talking about this.
The reality is that political resolve to fight COVID is waning. Popular support for measures is waning. You know, people are over COVID. The problem is it's not done with us. But we're in danger of losing this moment for transformative change.
The problem is that I didn't tell you that you could be over that. You're taking your life into your own hands thinking you know what's best for you, silly human. I know what's best for you. We know what's best for you. We build the future. What is their end goal with the World Economic Forum, or the WEF as I like to call them? There's a Bible verse that talks about how it's better to dwell in the corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious and vexing WEF. This is the Norwegian Director of Finance.
We need to accept that there will be some pain in the process. The pace that we need will open up for missteps. It will open up for shortages on energy. It will create inflationary pressures, and maybe we need to start talking about that.
Tonight, you may have noticed that filling up your car or truck is especially painful right now. Well, you're not alone, as gas prices are at an all-time high. The national average for regular gas now stands at $4.59 a gallon. That's $1.55 more than it was just 1 year ago.
That pain is actually worth it, because if we don't, there's no business case, there's no economy, there's no welfare. But so far, I think we have been a little bit careful actually talking about the pain in the short term that is likely to come from this very important change. Yeah.
Energy cost, your gas prices are okay in the short term because, guys, we're just transitioning to green energy. We're saving the planet. Meanwhile, they're presenting more income inequality, getting rid of the middle class so that the elite can take over.
What are we going to do tomorrow night?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
And how might the elite take over, you ask? Thankfully, these guys have already told us what they want to do. This is pretty crazy. Listen to what Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, actually says. He talks about putting a brain chip in your head in the next 10 years.
Imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains, and I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers. Is it imaginable?
Well, that's what Klaus Schwab wants. Well, listen even more to what his advisor says.
In places like Silicon Valley, equality is out, but immortality is in. Everybody's talking about immortality. Google has just established 2 or 3 years ago a sub-company called Calico, whose stated aim is to solve the problem of death. We've solved search, now we'll solve death. And they are not the only ones. And basically they are saying death is not some metaphysical phenomenon. We don't have to wait for the second coming of Christ in order to solve it. A couple of geeks in a laboratory can do it. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. Decision-making will increasingly shift from humans to these algorithms. And just as in the early modern age, authority came down from the clouds, from above the clouds, to humanity, so in the next stage of history, authority will shift back from humans to the clouds, not to the gods, but to the Microsoft cloud.
I'm not listening to you. You're crazy.
the Google Cloud. They'll just understand us so well that it will be crazy not to listen to their advice about what book to read, whom to marry, where to work, and what to vote in the elections.
Wow. Don't worry about making decisions, because eventually the brain chip in your head that, you're just going to get to be a better citizen of the world, the algorithm's going to make decisions for you. And, we'll know what's best for you. This is the type of system that is anti-God. No coincidence that everything man does is in the exact opposite of what God says is good and right. God is the giver of life, and he's the one who takes away life. And yet these people are trying to say, hey, I'm trying to not die, and I want to tell you when you can live and when you can die, because we want to get rid of all the undesirables in society. The promise of a utopia is a mirage in the desert. It looks good, but when you actually get to the mirage, there's just sand, and there's heat, and there's death. There's nothing more deceptive than this humanistic, man-centered view of the world. And if you really want to be happy, and if you really want to experience liberty, you have to do what our founders did and go to God's word. Never give up your freedom for security, even if security sounds good, even if they use a lot of language. Those who give up their freedom for security end up getting neither of them. The only time that you're going to actually have security is if you keep your freedoms. So what do you think about the World Economic Forum? Are they just a harmless group of people who have the best interests of the world in mind? Or is there something more sinister and nefarious going on? I mean, if you've seen the new James Bond movie, Spectre, that describes all of it. All you need to do is watch that and you pretty much have the World Economic Forum tagged. All this is a cosmic battle between what is true, what mankind says is true, and what God says is true. And in your own life, you are going to have to make that decision. And be careful, because if you reject what God says is true, the only thing that follows is deception, and then you believe in what man says is true. And we know from history that leads only to destruction and self-implosion. And it never works out in the end. The view of a mankind-centered government leads to the death of millions by genocide, where a small group of elite people benefit, and the rest of us, little peons, get hurt in the process. Thanks for watching. Tell us in the comments what you think. And before I go, use code RED to get some pro-life coffee from 7 Weeks Coffee. I just had some the other day. Really good coffee. I drink my coffee black. I don't have it all the time, but when I do, I drink it black. I don't like anything in my coffee, but it's really good coffee, and you're supporting a great cause in the meantime. And so I leave you with this.
So we, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is, will get attention this time. Will get attention this time. Mm-hmm.